Welcome to Phantom Zoned, the podcast where we dredge the lakes of hell in search of the worst the cinematic world has to offer. Then, we put it on trial for its sins against humanity, and should a film be found guilty, it will be jettisoned into the far, deep recesses of space. A Phantom Zone, if you will. I'm your host, Adrian Torres, and joining me as always is my co-host Scott Daly. How you doing, Scott?
I am doing great, Adrian. I am so excited to talk about the movie we are talking about today because it is the craziest thing I have ever seen.
That is no hyperbole. It is quite insane. We are talking about the Howling III. I'm sorry, the Marsupials, the Howling III. Werewolves. They suck, for the most part. I mean, not always, but the large majority of the time, werewolves suck. They're not entirely that interesting. Usually the movies are cheap, so they don't spend a lot of money on transformation effects. And if they do have lots of money that's pumped into them, you get really shitty CGI transformation effects. Usually nowadays, when you get werewolf movies, they tend on being PG-13. You don't get a lot of blood. You get more unintentional comedy. And it's just generally not that great. They are one of the classic monsters. I'll give them that. And the original Wolfman is a fantastic film. But The Howling 3 is a far ways away from that. Howling 3 is even a far ways away from the first Howling movie, which was directed by Joe Dante. It was mostly tongue-in-cheek, very satirical, and it was great in general. Joe Dante's a great director. I will go to bat for the majority of movies that he's done because he's fantastic. He did Gremlins 2, what's it called? The Burbs, and a whole bunch of other films. And he's generally a very funny guy. He understands how to get that mix of horror and terror and comedy that just works like gangbusters. The second Howling movie is terrible. Not really worth discussion. Give it a chance sometime if you want to see weird punk elements thrown in with werewolves, directed by somebody who didn't care. And the reason that's interesting is because the third movie is directed by the guy who directed the second movie, and it's even more bizarre than that entry. IMDb has the synopsis of a strange race of human-like marsupials appears suddenly in Australia, and a sociologist who studies these creatures falls in love with a female one. Is this a dangerous combination? Scott, would you say that sums up the movie?
No. This is definitely one of the many things that happens in this movie, but I think the person who was tasked with writing an IMDb synopsis for this movie had an impossible task because summing this movie up in 3 sentences you can't do it. You cannot do it.
I'm pretty sure that the person who wrote the synopsis for this was only awake for 10 minutes of the film. And,
and it was the 10 minutes near the end.
Exactly. And they're like, oh, that seems to make sense. This movie's okay, I guess. You kind of tuned into the type of movie you're going to expect from basically moment one, when on the screen you have a very cheap and dingy looking logo that is clearly playing on the old MGM lion logo, even though you've got a character that kind of looks like a dog, which we'll bring up later because it fits in with the movie, but it's already the director kind of winking, or I don't know if he's like enjoying himself or what it is, but it feels like a weird way to start the movie, especially when you've seen the film and you understand what this image is.
Yeah, I think this begins a long question of, was this movie attempting to be satire or not? And there are places where I think it absolutely is. And this logo is a good example of those because it's crazy. But then there's all kinds of other weird shit that happens that it can't be satire, or if it is, it's bad yet hilarious satire.
It might be bad satire. I gander that there's a chance that the first half of the movie, like the first 40, 45 minutes, has more attempts at satire or is trying to find that tone, but it's somebody who doesn't really understand what they're wanting to say with the satire. And that's an important element. If you're trying to be satirical, you have to understand the subject that you have in front of you. You have to know for a fact what it is you want to accomplish. What are you trying to say? Are you just making fun of something for the act of making fun of it? Or are you making fun of it in a way that you're trying to draw attention to the statement that you're making? And if you don't understand that divide, then it's the difference between something being good and something being the Howling III.
And Adrian, we've watched some really weird movies on this thing. We watched a movie about elves who want to impregnate a woman who is a product of incest from the Nazis. This movie is batshit insane. Yeah. Elves is normal compared to the shit that happens in this movie.
Well, yeah, this movie, one of the first images that you see on screen, it is literally an image of several men standing around a tree stump, Aboriginal men, because the majority of the movie takes place in Australia, and it's very important to make that inclination of what you're seeing. But it's a tribe of Aboriginal men who are standing around a stump of a tree and has some type of wolf-like creature that's attached to it. It kind of looks like a pelt at first because the quality of the movie is not very good, but you can start to adjust and notice that there's a mask that has a face on it, basically, on this thing. And the reason you notice this is it goes from what feels like black and white and slowly fades into color, but the color is not normal color. Like, it goes past the point and starts to head toward pastel.
And this happens for no reason.
It happens for no reason, just to introduce it, because we have this, and then we have a shot of a house that's labeled in Siberia, a house that we're never brought back to again at any other point, that has what looks like an Asian man running around the outside, and there's a dead body on the ground, and then they go up to the camera and are basically eaten as it cuts to black. And we're introduced to two government employees. At least I think that's what they are, because we're never really told.
Yep.
And they're in a room that's got giant computer banks. We never see them or this room again. And they're talking about wondering if the chatter that they're hearing is real, because they keep on getting reports of a Wolfman, and they don't know if Wolfman is code for something. But they mentioned that the Soviets are also talking about it, so it's got to be a real thing. And then I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but there's just a white guy and a black guy in a room, so that's the best way to differentiate them, because they don't have names. And the white guy says, "I've got a weird feeling." And the black guy who's looking at him goes, "Indigestion?" And the white guy goes, "No, fear."
It's important to say that these are two of the worst actors I've ever seen in my entire life. They deliver their lines as if they're reading them off a teleprompter, which they probably are. Why is the scene here?
I guess it's to set up the weird state of the world. This takes place, we assume, during the Cold War. We're not told if this is in modern day or if it's in the future, but you're led to believe that it's part of the Cold War, because there's constant talk about, well, Russia and the Soviets are doing this, and the Russians and the Soviets are bad, and the president of the United States is worried about what Russia and the Soviets are doing with the Wolfman information that they're getting. That sounds insane, but the president is one of the characters in the movie, and those are basically words that he says out of his mouth that he wants to find out about them.
The president who's always in his gym or pool area?
Yes. But the president has called upon the so-called sociologist who is listed in the plot summary. But when we first meet him, he's showing people a video that his great-grandfather took, which is a video of the picture that you see at the very beginning with the Aboriginal tribesmen prancing around the dead werewolf. And he stares directly into the camera when he's telling them about what the video is that they're about to see. It feels strange, and then gets stranger because he is the sociologist, whose name is Beckmeyer, is called to speak with the president. And when he speaks with the president's just in a bathroom, wandering around his pool. And he's talking to, there's no security or anything around. And he's talking to Beckmeyer about what he wants him to study, and that he wants him to find out if there are werewolves out there in the world. And then Beckmeyer points and turns and goes, "Who are these guys supposed to be?" at the audience. And the president says, "Oh, don't worry about them. They're just filming a documentary."
Yeah. I don't even know what to say. This is fucking weird.
It only exists for this scene.
I know. It's never mentioned again.
Yeah, the scene's 2 minutes long, and it cuts back to a completely different angle in the next scene when he's back in Australia, but everything's shot as if it's normal from there on out. Even though when we go back to Australia with Beckmeyer 2 seconds later, and we know we're in Australia because he's on the top of some random building with another professor, and you can see the Sydney Opera House.
Of course, because that's Australia, is the Opera House.
But did you notice the really weird pose that he tries to strike? They're standing by the edge of it, and Beckmeyer goes to put his hand on his hip, and then he flings back his jacket a little bit and puts his hand higher on his waist and throws his arm out to the side as if the documentary camera people are still there filming him.
They could be. I have no idea. This movie does whatever the fuck it wants to, whenever it wants to. It has people look at the camera so many times during the film, just randomly. This isn't even really a movie.
No. Well, it just keeps on getting more and more confused. And the dialogue it's not so much that it's abysmal or atrocious, but you're listening to it and you're feeling sorry for the actors who are having to say it. Because people are making statements that aren't followed up in conversation. Beckmeyer's told at one point, "Natural freaks are born all the time." Okay, yeah, I can understand that. That's a statement that's true. But is that your way of positing that, yes, there's a possibility that there are werewolves because natural freaks are born every day?
Yeah, that's what a werewolf is. You didn't know that?
So, considering that the movie has 7 different names for werewolves, one of which has somebody later on refer to a werewolf as an alien.
Yeah. So, I guess that what we're supposed to get with this, though, is that Beckmeyer's, believes in werewolf guy, Sharp is doubter guy, and that's their 2 roles, I guess.
Yes. But they don't really entirely matter because we're introduced to our actual lead, whose name is Jabora. That's the way they pronounce it, I think. It's spelled, at least in the credits, Jebora. But it gets pronounced at least 4 or 5 different times. And she has several women come after her and says that she's supposed to go basically to their leader. We don't know what the leader's going to do with her. We assume because Scott and I have seen so many of these cheap, terrible movies that he's going to rape her, but we're not really told. It's kind of inferred because he makes a comment, I'll buy you a Sony Walkman if you behave today.
Yeah. He's gonna rape her.
Probably, but I mean, we're not sure. She lets us know right away that this movie does belong in the Phantom Zone canon, because we once again have the tried and true moment that we look for in these movies is after he mentions that he will buy her the Sony Walkman, she decides to knee him in the groin.
Right in the nuts.
So there we go. We got our nut shot. That's
Kicked him in the nuts. We're only 10 minutes in and we already got the nut kick.
I get excited when that happens in these movies because I know that there is a force in the universe that wants there to be some type of connection to these horrible, horrible, shitty films we watch. The statement that gets said to her by her. Did you say he was like stepdad, step uncle, something?
Yeah, so she kicks him in the groin, and then we jump cut to her on a bus. Because I guess we should say that the cuts in this movie make no sense. There's no establishing shot. They just cut, and it's the next scene. So she's on a bus talking to a random priest who we never see again.
Who's voiced like a character out of Monty Python.
Yeah, and he's telling her, "You don't want to run away from home. Why would you run away from home?" And she says, and I quote, "Because my stepfather will try to rape me, and he's a werewolf." I can't.
That's okay. we get another abrupt cut that then sees a couple dudes who are drunk at night who end up coming across a bench that she's laying on, and the first drunken guy tries to talk to her and then ends up saying, "If you want to have a bit of fun, I'll give you my stereo." Which leads me to ask, was there some type of like unspoken trade bargaining agreement in the 80s in Australia that like if you offered a woman some type of electronics that she would sleep with you?
I just think you're vastly undervaluing how amazing a Walkman was.
Well, I'm not the only one, because when he offers that to her, she lifts her head up, partly transformed into a werewolf, and yells, "Compact disc!"
I didn't catch that. That's amazing.
Yeah. I rewound it because I couldn't tell what she was yelling, and I'm just like, wait. Her stepdad tries to rape her and offers a Sony Walkman before he's going to do the deed, and she's not into it, and she runs off. This dude comes up and offers her a stereo, and she wants to haggle with him.
While turning into a werewolf. Oh my god. We're just getting started. This is normal compared to where the movie goes from here.
Well, this is normal because she sits up while the guys run off, and the film cuts to it being daytime, and she's still sitting up. So she never went back to sleep. She just stared off into the distance to see if the guy was going to come back and offer a compact disc instead. And he does not.
She's like, I would have had sex with him if he had brought me the CD.
She waited all night. He never came back. She gave him a chance. That's commitment right there. But while she's sitting up, I guess he would be hero, even though he never does anything decidedly heroic in the entire movie.
No.
But we have an American pull up in what looks like a 58, 59, what's it called? Convertible. Like, it's fire red. It looks like it belongs in some old 50s monster movie, basically. But he parks his car off to the side and starts running after her because he wants to offer her a part in a movie, because he works on movies and shows her his shirt that happens to say Shapeshifters Part 8. So you get a tongue-in-cheek tongue-in-cheek joke that there is a movie being made in Australia about werewolves in a long-running horrible werewolf film series.
Yeah, but this whole scene is so weird because, like, he chases her down for, like, a super long time.
Yes. Into, like, a right before an alleyway. He literally corners her. And
then he's like, no, don't be afraid. I just chased you for, like, 300 yards. Don't be afraid. I don't want to hurt you.
I want to put you in the
I just want to put you in my movie.
You look beautiful, which she gets excited and concerned about and asks him why he thinks that she's beautiful. And he's like, oh, you got a wild spirit to you. It's great. I love it. And then he feels that everything's going to be okay when he introduces himself and he lets everybody know that his name is Donnie Martin.
Oh, Donnie.
Donnie is a sad sack. And the Donnie Martin also feels like the most American name you could come up with if you were a lazy writer.
I am absolutely sure that's what they did.
Probably. He's so annoying. I hate Donnie so much. Just, I can't get over it. I hate the guy. She agrees to go with him, and they show up on the film set for Shapeshifters 8, and we meet their kind of lecherous feeling director, who's clearly a play on Alfred Hitchcock.
The least subtle play on Alfred Hitchcock ever.
And it's so over the top. But I do love the guy just going, vivacious.
I think we're like 20 minutes into the movie at this point. Yes. I don't know what's happening yet. Like, we haven't gotten to what the plot is yet.
No, we haven't. And the movie decides to double down even further by saying, okay, you're watching a movie. We had a moment in the movie where we addressed that part of what was happening was a documentary. We then went, and you now know that there is a film crew that is filming a movie in this city. We're going to go even further into the field of crazy and have Donnie invite Jabora to go see a movie with him, and we're going to show you an elongated clip from that movie.
Which it came from Uranus, right? That's the name of the movie.
Yep, it came from Uranus.
Funny joke movie.
But
like a butthole.
Not really, because of the fact that it's a werewolf movie.
Yeah, I guess they come from buttholes now.
No, there's nothing that pertains to the butt in the scene that we see from the movie, which is about 4.5 minutes long.
Yeah, it's like, and I looked it up because I thought maybe they just like took scenes from a real movie. No, nope. They just filmed a whole werewolf transformation scene just for this part for reasons.
I think they just had the effects and they wanted the effects artist to make something. Because part of the transformation that you get in this movie, it came from Uranus, is actually shown as another transformation later in the movie. So they just used some of the same effects, for whatever the reason.
Which is an important note, because you have our main character saying specifically, that's not how it happens. That's not how we transform. Which is, she's like, for how like persecuted and hunted and almost extinct werewolves are in this universe, they're like super candid about the fact that they're werewolves. They'll just tell anyone.
Yeah. And so since they've gone to the movie and everything, they end up going back to Donnie's place and they have sex.
Well, of course, that's what you do.
They have sex to a slowed down cover of Bad Moon on the Rise.
Hey, that's not a little on the nose there, movie.
Well, not only is it that, but I would like to cite, there might be another case, but this might be the start of the crappy, slowed down pop cover songs that we now have in every single goddamn movie trailer everywhere. Because I was listening to it and I'm like, okay, this movie's from mid-'80s, and yet here it is. Here is what we have everywhere nowadays. I'm like, I know Bad Moon on the Rise isn't like the peppiest or fastest song, but they really slow it down for this movie.
Yeah, they do.
And Donnie casually asks Jabora, "Hey, remember when we were at that movie earlier? You said that's not what it's like in real life. What did you mean?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, that's not what it looks like when a werewolf transforms. We don't need for it to be a full moon or anything." And then he asks her to show him. And she says, "Nah, not really. I don't really want to do that." After she makes a big deal about it. And she falls over and goes to sleep. And they have a shot of Donnie staring at her while she's sleeping. And he is drenched in sweat.
He's so sweaty.
It's disgusting. I don't know. Like someone came over and they're like, "Oh yeah, we need a PA to come over. We need somebody from makeup department. We need you to spray him down. He doesn't look like he just had sex. We should make it look like somebody came into the room, threw a bucket of water on him, but for whatever reason, none of his sheets have any water or condensation on them whatsoever. But he's just got beads of water on his body, and it's just it grossed me out when they went to the shot. I'm like, okay, it's already creepy that you're staring at her while she's sleeping, but the fact that you have this much perspiration on you is really unsettling.
Did that gross you out more than the belly pouch?
No, that's not bad. Plus, you don't really know that's what it is at that time because it's like hairy and scarred over at that point.
Yeah, it just looks like a scar. So I guess is the idea that once she gets knocked up, the scar part goes away?
I guess.
Man, okay. So in that scene, he tries to lift up the blanket and see more of her body or whatever, and she's like, "No, we can't do that." But they've already had sex at that point.
Well, no, it's her for that part because I was trying to pay attention to it. It's her bra that he's talking about when they're they've had sex and she still has her bra on, and they're getting ready to go for round 2, and he wants to take off her bra, and she says, "No, I don't want you to, to take that off and to see that."
Okay, she's got a giant scar and a hairy tummy.
Yes.
How did he not see this? Now, I'm no sex expert, but I'm pretty sure you would notice that shit at some point during the act of copulation.
Yeah, I think he's okay with that. I think that it was more so that she was scared that he would react weirdly to her hairy boobs.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the start of the trend of Donnie taking really weird shit like a fucking champ. Because he does not seem to be fazed by any of the weird shit that happens to him in this movie.
No, but he's constantly an asshole and annoying.
Well, yeah.
I have several notes where he asked people throughout the movie, what's going on, and all I could hear was just Big Lebowski the whole time.
Shut the fuck up, Donnie!
That's all I could think. Donnie wanders into a moment where other people are talking, and it's like, "Hey, what does this mean?" And I'm just like, "I fucking hate you, dude. Why? We don't need you in this movie. They've over-explained so much shit, and yet you're still confused." Beckmeyer is going here and there, investigating goings-on with werewolves. There's several times that we don't see what he's actually doing or how he's drawing any conclusions.
He's not doing anything.
But he's constantly talking with Sharp, and he's actually walking right by the fountain area where it seems like they're shooting 90% of this Shapeshifters Part 8 film. But he and Sharp are talking about news that they're getting pertaining to the Soviets and information that they're still not giving up on the werewolves that they've encountered, and that America basically wants to hear what the Australians are finding out, which is something that's never explained in the entire movie. Why the fuck Sharp and Beckmeyer who are both Australian, are the ones who have been tasked by the American government to look into werewolves.
Because they shot it in Australia, but wanted the U.S. government involved, but they were Australian actors.
But it does. You have Donnie. Donnie's an American.
Donnie has to be a director. It's important.
No, but he's not at this point. I don't even know what he is working on this movie because we have a director.
He's an AD, man.
That's it?
I guess.
So why is he in charge of, or allowed to choose somebody for casting decisions then?
Who knows? Because he's Donnie, man. It's Donnie. He knows his shit.
No, fuck Donnie.
He managed to cast a werewolf in a werewolf movie. He's got the eye.
The werewolf movie is terrible because they finish shooting for the day and the director reminds everybody that they're throwing a party that night because there's a full moon and that they all have to come in costume because he wants it to be grisly. Now, I've watched plenty of movies, but I haven't worked on any movies. But as far as I know from everything that I've heard, I've never heard about a movie when they've stopped production in the middle of it, deciding we're going to have a giant kegger tonight. Well,
he says that's a wrap. He doesn't say it correctly, but to me it was implied that they finished shooting on the movie, that the movie was done, and this was the wrap party.
But he doesn't present it like it's a wrap party.
No.
He presents it like, hey, we're having a movie tonight, or sorry, we're having a party tonight because there's a full moon. Because he even says that there's a full moon, so make sure to dress, grisly. And at first, when I saw how everybody was dressed up, I thought, oh, it's a Halloween party.
Nope.
But no one references Halloween whatsoever. It's not that time of year. I didn't understand it. But the entire reason that the party exists is we learn that strobe lights, or at least flashing lights, trigger transformation involuntarily.
Yeah, this movie's just fucking with the werewolf mythology all it wants to, isn't it?
I don't. It doesn't. We don't know what causes them to, naturally. We don't know how the transformations take place. The few times that we see people transform in the movie, they have strobe lights shot at them.
Yeah, they never seem I don't think we ever see them do it on purpose. No. Intentionally.
It's not like it's never done in a Hulk fashion where they get mad or their hormones are up and that's what causes them to change. It's mostly the strobes that we see causing it, and it's not really.
Except, Adrian, for the werewolf nuns.
But the werewolf nuns seem like they can do it just they're stuck like that part-time.
I guess. The important part is that there are werewolf nuns in this movie.
But they're not. Well, they're people from Jabora's tribe who've been tasked with tracking her down, who have decided to don the guise of nuns to pass undetected.
Werewolf nuns.
And they're able to find out that Jabora, while she's suffering the effects of transformation from the strobes, ends up running outside through the city and collapses in the street and is taken to a hospital. And there's no way that this could have been told to the nuns, but they're able to track her down at the hospital.
Because they can smell her because they're werewolf nuns.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we're talking about strange powers and stuff, then Donnie should be able to do something because of the fact that he loves her, because he tells at least 7 different people that he's in love with her.
That random nurse.
Well, he starts out he tells her and then looks and tells the paramedics. He's like, I'm in love with her. And then they end up at the hospital, and the nurse comes out and says that he's got to go for the evening, and his comeback that he has is, but I'm in love with her. but nobody really cares.
And the nurse is like, "That's nice. You have to leave now."
When she's taken to the hospital, some doctors are taking a look at her, and they find out that all of her organs are running 5 times faster than what they're supposed to be. We also have a doctor who's able to instinctually, through intuition, guess that Jabora is pregnant because her hormones seem high.
Judging by my visual observation of her hormones, she is pregnant.
Yes.
But he's right, of course.
No, he is, because, he's a doctor. He went to school for that shit.
Yeah.
Jabora, while they're checking her out, is having a dream/nightmare of when she was running through the city streets, but then when she was also having sex with Donnie, finding out that she is going to have a knockoff alien burst through her chest.
Oh my god, that was so weird. What is happening?
I don't know. It's not like a hybrid baby. Like
it doesn't look like the baby at all.
Yeah, it looks like if you were to describe the alien from the first Alien movie to a child who was blind and had only ever drawn with crayons, that's basically what you get. Like, it doesn't. I don't know. There's no way to explain it. It looks stupid. It doesn't need to be there, and it just burst from her chest because that's what happens in Alien. But if you pay attention to that shot in the movie, you realize that the guy who's playing Donnie is a worse actor than you thought possible, because they focus on Jabora, who's staring at the alien that's popped out of her, and Donnie's just staring at her with his mouth open, yelling as loud as he can. Like, there's no emotion in his face whatsoever. So it just looks like he's shouting at her. He's not reacting to the child that's burst from her chest. He's just yelling at her for no reason. It's a great shot,
and
just
yet,
because it's intensely stupid.
And yet, somehow, it is still not the weirdest part of this film.
No, it's just, it's stupid. It's stupid because we go back to the doctors and they're talking about what an amazing find this girl is. They say to seal the hospital. They call in more doctors, as well as Beckmeyer and several other people, because somehow these doctors know that Beckmeyer and the other guy are working for the Australian and American government to find out about werewolves. And they're talking about her, and they're mentioning that, it's not really a werewolf, because they find out that she has a pouch that they start fiddling with, which is disgusting.
It's so gross. It's so gross.
But this is the point where Sharp refers to her as an alien.
Sharp doesn't know what he's talking about. Don't listen to Sharp. He's an idiot. Is he supposed to be a doctor?
He's a professor. He's a professor, just like Beckmeyer is. We're not told what he is. He's just another professor who somehow knows about werewolves, and that's why he was contacted by the government. But he's there, and he's talking about the find, and he and Beckmeyer decide that they need to leave to discuss what they found and get a hold of the American government. And we see them drinking, basically. And in the time that it took them basically to drink like 2 bottles of wine, because that's what you see on their table, in that time that's passed, the werewolf nuns they've killed every single person in the hospital and just left their bodies strewn about so that they could take Jabora back.
You could say they've taken a vow of murder
I know dead air is not a good thing for something like podcasts, but fuck you, Scott. You're a regular Donnie.
Whoa, dude, that's too much. It's too much.
Donnie gets interrogated in the next scene and has a gentleman who makes the comment to him, "Look, I'm a scientist, not a cop," which I guess is supposed to, instill trust in Donnie. And all Donnie can muster up is, I just fell in love with her.
Again, taking the whole knocked up a werewolf thing with a real sense of calm.
To which Beckmeyer looks at Donnie to let him know, well, she was in a very early stage of pregnancy. And Donnie, without missing a beat, says, how early? Well, fuck you, Donnie. He just told you she was in a very early stage.
I need a minute by minute.
The guy that you're talking to would tell you exactly if he knew. But no, you have to take it a step further and just be an asshole and say, well, how long is it? Is it really mine? I want to be sure. Yes, the girl that you randomly found on the park bench may also be a prostitute, but she never decided to mention it to you or charge you at all. There was never a point, well, I guess technically we can say that there was never a scene before they had sex where he discussed what type of electronics he was going to buy her.
I bet it was a CD player, though.
Knowing Donnie was a goddamn 8-track.
But this is one of my favorite quotes in the movie, though, because our man Sharp here says, Donnie, did you have sex with her? Yes. Was it normal?
And then he goes on to mention the fact that, well, she's a werewolf. There's no way for us to know exactly if everything works fine. She was just on the bed, drugged, and you guys probed her entire body. I'm pretty sure you were able to tell if everything was there just like a human.
It is interesting that her organs work 5 times faster, and Donnie didn't seem to notice that having sex with her was different from a normal human, because Donnie doesn't notice shit.
Donnie doesn't notice anything, but he is in love with her. It's important.
Of course.
We also find out, just apropos of nothing, but they cut to a shot that replays the last scene we just went through in audio form with 2 Russians who are just sitting at a table listening to the recording.
Yeah, and that never goes anywhere.
No, it's just to let us know that, hey,
other people are listening.
The Russians really are listening.
But then we go to the opera scene.
No, we don't. We don't go to the opera scene yet.
What?
Yeah, no, we have a scene that's in between there. Because remember, she gets taken back by the nuns, and she's taken back to Flow Camp, where she can be with her stepdad, who looks like a constipated Peter Boyle, who's in charge of these women who have a crappy drawing of his face and then a random woman's face, and they're waving feathers over the pictures and an unlit fire pit.
It's their ritual, man. Don't knock the marsupial ritual.
And this is important because the picture is of a Russian ballerina who is in Australia for a performance that she's doing at the Sydney Opera House. And through waving the feather over the pictures, they're able to send a mental image to a guy who's with the ballerina lady, Olga. But the guy, they never established if it's her boyfriend, if it's her former lover, if it's her family member. But he's with her and gets this image of a steroid-ridden Mr. Clean, and she instantly falls in love.
Nuts.
She grabs the picture and starts howling and getting turned on, And like, it's a really shittily drawn picture.
It's like, it's like it took 3 seconds to draw. There's not a lot of detail here. It's a few circles with the mouth.
It's a very rough outline that does get his basic features down, which is that he looks, he is bald. Like he looks like a rather intelligent mongoloid.
But my favorite part of this scene is when he's receiving the information, his head, and his hair, does this weird thing.
It just starts pulsating.
Yeah, it's so weird. And, so these are two characters who we've never heard of before.
No.
They reference them, really minorly. One of the conversations between Sharp and Beckmeyer mentioned that a Russian dancer just defected to Australia and that she was doing a performance and they were going to go see the performance. They mentioned that offhandedly, but suddenly they're major players in this movie.
Well, what we're led to believe basically is that she is the werewolf that the Russians have been keeping track on.
Yeah.
Because she says she doesn't want to do rehearsal that night for the ballet because she starts getting the sensation. And the guy checks her over and checks her teeth and everything and says, "Oh, you're not going to transform. It's going to be okay." We find out that this guy's an idiot because in the middle of her doing the practice, while she's spinning around, she ends up transforming into a wolf on stage.
It's actually... I really enjoyed this. It's pretty great.
It's pretty great for the first part of it because while she's transforming, everybody notices and it's like, holy shit, what's going on? Everybody save for her dance partner that evening, who has thrown himself into the air in slow motion. And while he's coming down as she's transformed, and he manages to fall directly into her mouth to be bitten and killed.
And luckily, who's in the audience of this performance? It's Sharp and Beckmeyer,
who decide to take her to the same hospital that the other werewolf broke out of. And instead of deciding, you know what, we should probably have more security because last time everyone was killed, they decide, no, we're going to take her to a separate room where no one else knows we are, but still has the same setup of the 3 giant, bright, weird lights. Have you ever seen that in a hospital before?
No, that doesn't exist. This is only the second time that we've had a werewolf sit down in a hospital chair, but there's going to be 12 more before this movie's out.
Yes.
They keep strapping these guys to chairs and interrogating them, and they keep breaking out of the straps. It's so ridiculous.
Well, this time it's stupid because Beckmeyer decides that he wants to try a couple lighting effects. And he has a Polaroid camera that he's taking pictures, to document what she looks like before. And starts taking pictures, and she starts convulsing because of the flash from the light acting as a mini strobe. And she starts to transform. And then the other Russian guy who doesn't have a name pops up and tries to attack Beckmeyer. And Sharp tries to grab a gun. And there's a cop that's also there for whatever reason. He's not in the first couple shots when they show up at the hospital. And then magically he's there taking a look at everything. And he's able to fire several shots into the giant, ugly-looking werewolf so that we can find out that it's her friend, ex-lover, or whatever.
But he's dead.
He's dead, but because they're distracted by that, Olga's able to get up and transform and breaks away from the bed, grabs the cop guy and pushes him to what you think is the wall of the room, but it actually turns out that the room that they're in is at the very top of the hospital, and she proceeds to throw the guy off the top of the building, which ends up being a very, very long shot of a dummy falling from 100 stories off the ground.
And we
while
watch
going,
it, and And that's how long it actually goes for.
You see him, his body starts in the top left corner of the building. As he's falling, he somehow ends up on the other side of the building. I don't know if there was wind that carried him somehow, because he starts on one side of the building and ends up drifting to the other side of the building before he's splatted on the ground.
It's a very blustery day. That's what happens.
And this is one of the moments where it's hard to tell if the movie is truly tongue-in-cheek or if it isn't, because in the background they have a song that's called Falling Down that's playing while he's falling down.
Yeah, and I think it is trying to be tongue-in-cheek. I think it just forgets scene to scene. So, some scenes it remembers and was like, oh yeah, we're trying to be funny. Let's do something funny here. And then other scenes, it just thinks it's being, I don't know, clever? This movie's really weird, guys. Well, it's really weird.
The song that they have playing in the background ends up then being on the radio when Beckmeyer and Sharp are driving up to the camp that's right outside the village where Jabora and everybody are. But they never show them getting clearance or talking to anybody about getting clearance to go to this place or having a plan to go to this place. They just then had a piece of paper. I thought that somehow it was going to turn out that Olga was telling them to go to this place and they had to get it, and she was in the back of the car, but nope, she's not there. No. While they're checking out the camp and meeting a nice / crazy Aboriginal guy by the name of Kendi, we see... Oh,
you mean my favorite character in the entire movie?
He's great. He's only got 5 scenes in the movie, and every single one of them is
amazing,
complete nonsense. But we get to one of the most famous scenes of this movie. If you haven't seen the film, there's a chance that you may have seen the clip that happens next, which sees Jabora run a little bit away from the group and into a barn so that she can give birth to a little shriveled up marsupial.
I'm going to have nightmares about this scene. No kidding, nightmares. This is the weirdest I just wrote what the fuck 6 times in my notes because this whole thing is so weird.
You can find the clip online. It's got this little the little thing pops up between her legs and she's talking to it just like a mom would, and she licks her hand so that her scent is on her I guess basically pelvic / pubic hair that leads up to the pouch that's opened up so that the baby can be warmed up. And you do see the baby climb up her body and then make itself at home inside her pouch.
God, this is so weird. And you see it all. We see it happen. And the camera is this is why we did this movie. That's how the camera treats the scene.
It's great because watching it at home is weird. Watching it with a theater full of drunken people is even weirder, because this was one of the clips they chose for last year at every Fantastic Fest. Basically, they have an hour and a half spot one night that's called 100 best deaths or worst deaths, depending upon what they're doing that year, and it's always got a theme. And last year was the miracle of death, and it was either horrible or weird or disgusting birth scenes, or horrible, disgusting, or weird birth scenes that involved somebody dying at the same time. And at the halfway point of the evening, they showed this scene, and everyone in the audience. And then when they do this, it's one of the midnight spots. So this occurred at about 12:35 a.m. on night 5 of Fantastic Fest. So when it hit, everyone in the audience just completely fucking lost their minds.
It's so crazy. Like, people listening, if you haven't seen this movie, go watch the scene. It is nuts. It's so gross. I can't believe this wasn't a rated R movie. Like, I know it doesn't show anything explicitly, but you see it kind of come out between her legs. Like, it pokes its way out. And God, it's so weird.
We find out where Olga was going to because she ends up showing up at the same camp and jumping into the arms of Philo while there's several women who are on their knees chanting what sounds like holy moly.
So I guess this is the plot. So now she was called there to bring fresh blood to the bloodline, and now that's a good thing that happened.
I know it doesn't. You think that you're going to spend more time with characters right here, but we get another abrupt cut that sees that the army guys have shown up to back up Beckmeyer and Sharp right outside the camp, and Kendi is with them. And they're all discussing what they should do. And they ask Kendi, Kendi, what do you think we should do? And he mentions that they're pure evil and that they've got to be stopped. And so the next day, they go in to try to grab as many of the marsupial or marsupial villagers that they can and take them back to start performing medical experiments on them. And Beckmeyer tasks himself to ask as many questions as he can to Olga the ballerina to find out, what drew her there. What was it that made her want to go there? And she mentions that she's not sure what it is, but something about Philo called her to him. There was something about his spirit that meshed with hers. And while she's saying this, Beckmeyer gets really, really close to making out with her.
He suddenly loves her.
He's in Donnieville, basically. He's spent a short period of time with a woman that's some form of lycanthrope, and it's just like, oh my god, I totally love you.
Maybe this is just the effect that female werewolves have on men. You just turn them really stupid.
I guess. Jabora is taking care of her kid with Donnie, who she mentions that she psychically felt that he was in the area, so she met up with him. But this is like a day after she's had her kid, and her kid has gone from being like newborn size of your palm to a baby that's like 8 months old.
And again, Donnie, super cool with all this.
Super
proud
cool with
dad.
It.
Just
their kid doesn't look human.
No.
Their kid looks just really fucked up looking. It's the thing of nightmares. If you're in a steady relationship and you're thinking about having a child at some point, you should probably take a look at this. Your kid's not going to look at this, but it's by seeing this, you're probably going to think twice, at least for a little bit. We then get a shot of Jabora and Donnie sitting on a rock with Kendi, and Donnie says that he thinks that they should maybe go back home. They should get a hold of people. And Kendi says, you can't go back. You're one of us now.
What? Didn't Kendi do the thing? What?
Yes, Kendi just said literally 2 minutes earlier that all of the marsupials are pure evil and should be killed. But now it turns out that maybe he was saying that to protect himself because he's actually one of the marsupials.
Kendi's playing both sides. Son of a bitch, Kendi.
Beckmeyer has moved on from being completely obsessed and slightly creepy / molesty with Olga and has moved on to Philo, who is strapped to a chair and chuckling oddly. So Beckmeyer decides, oh, you know what? the flashes seem to do something to Olga, I've got a super high-powered strobe light gun that I'm going to point at this dude. And he's pointing it at him, and he starts transforming. And then the movie decided to confuse me when machines started exploding because of the transformation that Philo was having. And Beckmeyer says he's sucking all the energy in.
What the fuck is the movie doing? And why is it cutting between shots of what's on the TV in the background of this? It's so weird.
It's never explained what they mean by the energy. If when they transform, they're somehow transferring part of the electricity into them to help them transform.
I'm going to say yes.
Okay. Beckmeyer ends up getting bitten because he's stupid and he won't turn off the strobe when Sharp tells him to. And Sharp asks him, "Oh, are you going to turn into one of them?" And Beckmeyer says, "No, it's just a bite. I don't think I'm going to change. I think you have to exchange bodily fluids."
That's a super casual reaction for a person who has no idea how this actually works. And it's the Donnie effect, man. Beckmeyer's just rolling with shit.
Because of the fact that Philo has fallen over onto the ground, because he ends up getting shot by a tranquilizer dart by Sharp because they just happen to have a giant tranquilizer gun in the room, which I guess is, I don't know if it's a law, but maybe it's a law in Australia that every hospital room comes equipped with a giant elephant-style tranquilizer gun.
Yeah.
Do you know? I'm deferring to you to see if you happen to know, Scott.
Do I? No, I do not know.
I wanted to check. They notice that he has stripes on the back of him, which leads Beckmeyer to think that the were marsupials are some form of descendant of the Tasmanian wolf, which is the only form of carnivorous marsupial.
The weird part about this is that's like true information. that there was a thing called the Tasmanian wolf that went extinct in the 1930s, I think. That was the only carnivorous marsupial. So the movie decides to randomly be realistic for half a minute.
It then 2 seconds later is not realistic when they're talking to Philo to ask him about it, and Philo looks at a picture of a Tasmanian wolf, and he goes, "Oh yeah, we come from him. He was hunted, and he ended up getting killed, and when he was killed, his spirit entered a man who had sex with a woman, and their child ended up being half human and half were marsupial."
What the fuck? I don't even know what to say about this.
I did not know that when you are possessed by somebody, that it changes how your DNA is formed.
Oh, you didn't know that? You need to watch The Exorcist, obviously.
I didn't know that. Sharp is still in the semi-denial state because his response to what Philo says is pure genius. Because he says it's the ramblings of a genetic mutant on psychedelic drugs.
I love Sharp. He's the best.
He's so stupid. Beckmeyer ends up deciding the next day that he's going to save Baldy and the ballerina because he's in love with the ballerina and he doesn't want to piss off Baldy, who tried to bite him earlier. But also in this shot of a stark white jail cell room, and they're dressed all in white, he brings them out, but also in frame is one single screaming monkey.
Never explained what the monkey's doing there.
No, and they even have a shot that stays on the monkey. For
they do a close-up on the monkey. What? Why?
Of him just screaming. Are they testing the monkey too? Are there like were monkeys
I
that
think
exist?
so. I think it's
in
were monkey.
Australia?
I think it's a marsupial were monkey.
There's some child, some 3-year-old child who's turning into a were monkey that they're doing experiments on at the same time.
I'm saying somebody fucked a monkey, and that's something happened.
No, somebody whose spirit was possessed by a different type of marsupial
I'm so sorry.
fucked a monkey.
You're right.
Or maybe it was the spirit of a monkey that possessed somebody and they fucked a woman, and this is that they're half and half offspring. This is what the movie's doing to us, people, okay?
This is we're having serious conversations about a half monkey, half marsupial. Fuck. Let's move on. I can't take this.
No, I won't. Okay. It doesn't get any better. I'm telling you that here right now. It sounds like something's going to make sense that we're going to be able to describe. But no, we go from this to other characters having a conversation about the same exact goddamn thing. Because we have fucking Donnie and we have fucking Jabora talking about it. And they're having a discussion about the Tasmanian wolf spirit coming to Jabora in a dream to tell her that things were going to get bad. And Donnie's not really understanding it whatsoever, and he tries to make sense of it, and he's like, oh, you mean like the platypus when this thing fucked another thing and we got the platypus.
But
It's
then
not
Jabora's like, no, yeah, that's what happened. Why are you
that's
saying
exactly what it is? And you're just like, wait, why? Why? And while this is going on, to further confusion about how transformation works, we see Kendi standing by a cliffside, painted in white and red paint, the red on him to symbolize the stripes that would be on a Tasmanian wolf. And he throws his arms into the air, and he calls upon the power of Herr Mulin to help him transform.
But I thought they could transform at will, Adrian.
I see. That's what I don't understand, because he's standing there and he's calling upon the power to transform, because there are hunters in the area who are stalking the woods, hoping to kill werewolves that are in the area.
In a shocking turn event, the movie about a half-wolf hybrid with a baby sack in its belly doesn't make a lot of sense.
No. The group of hunters who are trying to find the werewolves are being led by an Aboriginal guide who Kendi, who is also an Aboriginal, mentions that they have a Blackfoot with them, which struck me as a little weird and on the nose. But his name is Jocko, and he has a great moment where he hears howling in the distance, and he instinctually knows about all the legends of the area, and so he knows that it's the spirit of Herr Mulin, which is a giant werewolf-type creature that has one tooth. And he says, if you have one tooth, where do you put it in your mouth? It'll come out your asshole. And then tells them, you can keep on going if you want, but I'm out of here. And just walks off.
I just figured it out. It came from Uranus. This is a tooth. It's a callback joke, Adrian. It's a callback to earlier in the episode when we were talking about it came from Uranus film.
So Kendi manages to transform, and he descends upon all the hunters and kills them all. But because the movie can't really make up its mind of what the rating it wants to be or how severe it wants to show everything, it continually cuts very disorientingly between first-person POV fisheye lens shots of Kendi rushing at people, and then very quick third-person shots for a couple seconds of the wolf attacking people.
Yeah, I guess because the thing wasn't very good, so they tried to hide the wolf costume as much as possible. So they just switched to its fisheye point of view whenever it was actually in wolf form.
Yeah. So after a nice little snack, Kenny decides to lie down for a nap
to die.
but he psychically calls everybody to his sign, and Jabora takes it rather hard, and this leads to one of my favorite moments in the whole movie.
Insert moment here.
That's fantastic. Like that's why Kendi is so great, because he doesn't give a fuck. He's 1 second he's calling upon a spirit to transform him into an animal, and then he's just like, I'm done. Bye.
Yeah, well,
I called upon a higher spirit to transform me into an animal, and then I psychically called all of you over to my side because I was going to die, and now I don't believe in any of that stuff.
And we don't really understand why he's dying, but we're just cool with it, I guess.
Yeah. This causes a rift in the group, and Donnie and Bald Cole Meany end up having an argument, and Baldy decides that he's going to wander off into the distance on his own, to which Olga runs over to a tree and literally watches him for about 45 seconds as he walks off into the distance. But the camera just lingers there.
Yeah, I think they've run out of things to do at this point. I don't know if they know what they're doing.
The movie's an hour and 38 minutes long, and it still gets weirder for the next 15 minutes. They could easily chop that out. It's not like they were running over. It's not like they were like, we're only at an hour 10. We need to get another 5 to 7 minutes so we can call ourselves a feature film.
It's very important that Olga really feel the loss of the person that she was called to magically from Siberia, that she never really got to know and had no formal connection with at all, and immediately forgets as soon as he's gone. It's very important.
Hey, Scott, remember how 2 seconds ago we were really sad that Kendi died?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be fantastic if his charred body, because they decided to cremate him outside after he passed away, if his charred body that has the skull of a wolf were to magically come back to life and bite a guy?
That would be really fantastic, but there's no way that could happen.
Oh, it does. And I'm sorry to disappoint you. It's not fantastic. It's terrible. He pops up for 2 seconds.
I loved it. How do you not love it?
To bite a guy in the neck, and then is riddled by machine gun fire and dies.
Rest in peace, buddy. You didn't become a rainbow. You became a skeleton dog that got blown up by a machine gun.
About 30 seconds after that happens, Baldy shows up at the site of where Kendi's dead body is, has painted him exactly like Kendi did, and calls upon the power of the spirit, and says that he wants to be turned into the big one, in which a ray of light hits him. The guard that got bit a couple moments earlier is in the tent sleeping, but twitching like he's starting to transform into a wolf. He never does, and they don't really explain why he starts to twitch like he's going to, since Beckmeyer explained away that it's not necessarily, a bite that's going to transform you.
Hey,
we do find out that the big one that Baldy was talking about is basically a giant werewolf that looks like a rabid weevil.
That's a really good description.
And he's blown up. He literally pops into the tent and is shot by a bazooka and blows up.
Because the guard in the tent has a bazooka, which from one angle you can clearly see that there is no missile in the bazooka. No. It is a hollow tube. But that doesn't matter because he fires it and they both blow up. And that's the end of Bald Guy.
It's so this gives us a little bit of insight into this super special spirit Tasmanian wolf that's able to jump into people and help them transform. It's pretty shitty when it comes to deciding who it's going to give these powers to, because it imbues Kendi with the power for a couple minutes. He's able to kill a whole bunch of hunters, and then dies. And then Baldy, who's supposed to be even more powerful than Kendi, ends up getting an even larger spirit to jump into him, and he dies in a shorter period of time.
But that's okay, because Olga is immediately over him.
Yeah, she's into Beckmeyer. We also decide to check in now with the president, who we haven't seen in an hour and 15 minutes, while he works out in his personal gym in a pink polo shirt. I have no problem with men wearing pink, but he's in a gym wearing a pink polo shirt, which doesn't really lend itself to the workout variety. We also get a reminder that we're in the 80s when we get a kind of toxic exchange.
Some good old gay panic. Gotta mix that in.
Yeah. Sharp ends up saying, I think he fell in love with the Russian werewolf. And the president says, was it female? Sharp says, yes. And the president says, well, thank God for that.
It's okay to fall in love with a giant half-wolf man, as long as it's not a gay one.
Okay, we're basically done with this movie, so I'm going to skip through the next little section because it's idiotic. Just completely, like, this movie's already been completely stupid, and then the movie decides, hey, so a whole bunch of weird stuff's gone on. Now Beckmeyer and the ballerina are hanging out together, and she says that she believes that she's in love with him. They're going to open up a small hippie commune that the two of them and Donnie and Jabora and their child will live in together. And you see all of a sudden Jabora's child looks like he's a couple years old. And you see that Beckmeyer and Olga have had a kid. And then all of a sudden we have a conversation where Donnie says that he thinks it's time that they went back home to the real world, and they just leave. And then we end up seeing a short montage of Beckmeyer and Olga's daughter growing up until she's the age that she'd basically go to college. And we find out that 15 years has passed because Sharp finally tracks Beckmeyer and Olga down and lets them know it's taken me a long time to find you, and asks, hey, when was the last time that you guys happened to see Donnie and Jabora? And Beckmeyer mentions, oh, that was 15 years ago that they left. You know, just casually. In the span of 2 minutes, 15 years has gone by. Sharp ends up letting Beckmeyer know, hey, you can come back to the regular world. Everything's fine. It turns out that everybody ended up finding out that werewolves were a big thing, and the murders of werewolves all over the world became public. And then he has the greatest passage ever. Then the Pope came out and said that lycanthropes were all God's children. He endorsed an amnesty, and so did the president.
Well, thank God for that. Thanks to the Pope.
Well, the Pope and the president came out and said, hey, guess what? You know, those
Problem
werewolf dudes,
solved.
they're pretty cool. That's nice. And we then see that Donnie and Jabora have decided to go to Hollywood to make a life making movies, but they're really pissed off at each other.
Yeah, they seemed super miserable.
Yeah.
So good call.
Like, Donnie's yelling at her saying, hey, we need more sex in the scene. And she's saying, no, we need to speak to the drama of the movie. And Donnie who's like wearing a really creepy Freddie Mercury style mustache, says, "Hey, when have I ever steered you wrong? When have I ever made it that the product wasn't right? When have I ever gotten this wrong?" And she just says, "Okay, yeah, you're right."
Hooray.
We jump directly from that to a close-up shot of Beckmeyer looking really old, teaching at a school, and you find out that another 8 years have passed from the last scene we just had, which was 15 years before the previous scene. So in the span of 3 minutes, we've jumped 23 years into the future.
Yeah, the movie is off the rails now, and is just crashing toward its conclusion that makes no sense.
No. We're brought up to speed because of the fact that one of the students at this school, that is a college in California, where by whatever year this is now, have mandatory color-coded uniforms that they're supposed to wear. Did you notice that?
Yeah, that was really weird. I don't know if that's supposed to be like a future thing or what.
No, you don't find out. But one of his students is actually Jabor and Donnie's son, who's also the most mumbly actor you've ever seen on film. Because this is literally an impression of how he talks. I'm not trying to be rude, but it's how they have it. He goes, "Yeah, my mom and dad told me all about you. They said they really miss you. They want me to come here and bring you this message." And you're like, "Wow, that's great, kid. I can't really understand what you're saying whatsoever. You were such a bright, hopeful creation of the future because you're a fucking marsupial human hybrid, and yet you're just a giant gangly motherfucker." and we never see the kid again.
Nope, gone.
While the kid's mumbling, Beckmeyer's having a flashback to when he and Sharp were initially talking about how this kid was a huge evolutionary find. But we don't find out what's going on with the kid whatsoever. And Beckmeyer's not interested to ask him, "Hey, what are you doing with your life?" Blah, 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 blah. He reveals that Donnie changed his name to something vaguely Steven Spielbergian, and that Jabora has changed her name and become a world-famous actress. And we learn how famous she is because of the fact that there is an awards ceremony that she ends up winning an award at for Best Actress. And Scott, did you happen to catch what the name of that award show was?
It is the Academy of Laser Arts and Sciences. So, like the Oscars, but with lasers.
With lasers and with Dame Edna. If nobody's familiar with who Dame Edna is, Dame Edna was a famous performer. I don't remember what they actually went by, but it was a character that was created that basically think a more over-the-top and campy but less charismatic RuPaul. And that's basically what Dame Edna is, which seems weird because this is at this point in the movies world. If we started out and the first moment of the movie took place in like 1986, we're now 23 years in the future from that. The Dame Edna character, that person would be dead. So it's a little weird that they have them presenting at this show because it dates the movie, but then it also takes you out of whatever they're trying to do at this point in the movie. But Jabor ends up winning the Oscar for Best Actress, goes up to say her acceptance speech, except for there's a whole bunch of cameras that are flashing, so she ends up transforming on TV.
Hey, Adrian, if you were a werewolf that got triggered by flashing lights, what profession would you pick?
Acting.
Of course, because there's never any pictures taken of actors.
And they even have a montage.
Yeah.
When she wins, instead of showing her coming up to the stage like they do, they have a montage of like 12 pictures that they put up on the screen. So somebody's taking her picture, apparently without flash, I guess, all the time. And she has this transformation on screen, and her transformation is what ends the movie. But right before it ends, you see the director of the Shapeshifters Part 8 movie pop up for 2 seconds to say cut. Now, there's a whole bunch of stupidity going on here. The first thing that I'm going to ruin for Scott is that this is directly cribbing from the first Howling movie. Because
really?
the first...
Yeah, I think we didn't mention at the beginning that I did not see Howling 1 or 2.
No, well, we established it in the other episode.
Yeah.
So, hopefully people are listening there. They're listening to these in order. But I don't have power over them. I'm not the spirit of Herr Mulan, so I can't do that. But yeah, the end of the first movie ends with the main character, who is a news reporter. They end up transforming on TV, basically getting out the word to everybody in the world that, hey, werewolves do exist. It's a little weird that that's how this movie ends, because we had a scene a couple minutes earlier where they mentioned that the Pope came out and said that lycanthropes were all of God's children and granted amnesty to all the lycanthropes, and that the President of the United States also came out and, offered amnesty to all the lycanthropes.
Yeah, it's weird that, like, as she transformed, like, everyone's freaking out. But I thought, like, we were cool with werewolves now.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Maybe something happens in that 8 years that we know nothing about when they start conforming and having people dress in the same uniforms at school, that something happens and it turns the tide. Maybe they made yet another underworld movie in this universe, and that's what sent people to go and, oh yeah, that's right, werewolves are fucking terrible.
Don't make fun of Underworld, man.
I'm not a fan. I won't. That'll be a discussion for another time. But if you have a scene in your first movie where you have a character practicing shooting objects, and the next direct scene has a fight where people are shooting guns and they are missing all the objects around people.
Sometimes you get really excited in the moment and the adrenaline comes and you just can't take it.
Why do you have a scene of a movie where somebody is practicing firearms and then in the next scene they're missing all the people they're supposed to be shooting?
I don't know. I don't even know which movie you're talking about, to be honest.
I'm talking about the first one.
I do not remember that at all.
Yeah, they've got a scene where she's practicing shooting the guns, and then she's has the fight in like the subway station area, and she's missing a whole bunch of people.
Well, they're running around.
She hits more columns than she hits people in that scene. Fine. I don't care. Did you notice, or did you watch to the very end of the credits?
No, I turned this thing off as soon as it was done.
The very last thing that pops up on screen after the credits have rolled is the words "Adios, amigos" show up.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I watched the entire time because I was still writing notes, because while the credits was going, I was checking emails and stuff, and wrote down the whole line agreeing with you is, how does somebody go, with not transforming with the paparazzi or all the pictures that were taken of her for the montage. And I looked up because I heard the song Drowning Out, and the last little credits went up, and then in the middle of the screen popped up "Adios, amigos," and then it faded to black, and I'm like, what? Is there something that I missed that was going on during the credits?
This movie just does whatever the fuck it wants to do.
Exactly. So this is part 3 in the series, and at the very beginning of the film, when it's going through the credits, it says that it's based on the Howling III. And there was a piece of trivia that I found that mentions that although the guy who wrote the script, or the guy who wrote the book, approved the directors buying the rights of the name for the Howling, and the credits say that it's based on it, the actual novel Howling 3 Echoes is set in the United States and has a very, very different story. And there's only like the smallest threads that connect the two of them. And that's basically the same thing that happened for like the other movies that they made. For like the one after this, Howling, a couple entries later, Howling 6, The Freaks, was based on another book in the series, but the story didn't match what they had on screen, even though they bought the rights to the story to use. And that is right. I did say number 6 because there's been a total of 9 movies in the Howling series.
That is insane.
They're all terrible. I tweeted out a picture when I was at Half Price Books a couple weeks back because I knew we were going to be doing this. I wanted to see if they had it. And they had this in part 4, and they like the artwork that they have on there isn't very good at all. It's just utter complete shit. They all look bad. I think there's a set that randomly has parts 5, 6, and 7 on like one disc, but all the other movies in the series are purchased separately. I don't know why that is. I don't understand it. It's terrible. It's a terrible series. But what's interesting about 3 and 4 is their cover art. Looks like it was done by the same company, but their taglines are hilarious. The Howling 3, The Marsupials, very simple. It says, "The fear is breeding fast." Kind of makes sense, because there is a birth scene that's in this one.
There's a baby, yeah.
Yeah. Howling 4, The Original Nightmare. Would you like to guess what the tagline is, Scott?
No, I have no idea.
Fear is breeding fast.
Are you fucking kidding me?
They took out the word "the" to differentiate the two films, because that was clearly the mistake that was throwing people off. Is that they saw the tagline and they're like, "Oh, fuck that! They used the word 'the.' What do I look like?" Scott, let me ask you a question. It might be very difficult for you to wrap your mind around, but please, let me know what you think. How would you fix this?
Oh boy. This is a tall order, sir. Make a story? Like one story? It's like the concept of these weird marsupial werewolves is kind of cool. So like focus it more around like this werewolf falls in love with a dude and then has a baby, and then maybe make the baby like some super werewolf or something. I don't know. Like, how would you fix it? I don't know with this one. This one has me stumped.
I think the first thing that when you're talking about this movie is that it wants to be satirical. The issue, of course, that we've established is the fact that it's not satirical for the whole movie, and tone is a very important thing. There's a review that I just wrote for a big major release film, and part of what I discuss in it is that the tone is uneven. And if you're not able to have a consistent tone, it sinks your movie. If you're going to have a movie that's satirical, but you drop that satirical aspect in the second half of it, it's going to completely destroy your movie. At the same time, you have to understand what it is that you're lampooning, or that you're trying to put a light on, or what the message is that you're having for having this satirical slant. One of the best actually, there's 2 really good examples that always pop into my mind when it comes to satirizing anything. One of them is put up on a high shelf, and one of them is much maligned, but what it wins lots of points because of what it's trying to do. It's successful in. The first one is Putney Swope, which was directed by Robert Downey Sr., and it's very much lampooning the TV world and somebody coming in with a different viewpoint, and just how they spin everything, and it's fantastic, and it just turns a whole bunch of stuff on its ear. The other one is Bamboozled by Spike Lee, where they're trying to diversify television program at a network, and somebody jokingly mentions, "Oh, we should, bring back the minstrel shows. Why don't we just have, blackface? But we'll have black people in blackface because we'll be making a statement and everything." And it's mentioned in jest, and the studio's like, "Oh yeah, let's do that. That sounds absolutely fantastic." And while there's points where both movies kind of slightly miss the mark because of what each of them is trying to attain and the lofty goals that they're setting, they hit it and they stand out. And that's why those are two movies when people talk about great examples of satire, for better or worse, that's what people think of. And this movie just didn't have a strong enough vision behind that. And I think you can, because there's elements of the first Howling movie that are both tongue-in-cheek and have that satirical tone to it. That's how you're able to differentiate it. But that's what you need to do. I think if you cut out a lot of the second act of the movie and you focused on that first section, and had they decided to make any of the scenes that are with Beckmeyer, not just with the president, but with Beckmeyer, have those be, documentary style, and intercut that with Donnie and Jabora working on, the movie within the movie. You can have both of those sides. You can have the mockumentary and be making fun of people who are trying to be scientific or conduct investigations, but they're looking into the unknown and have it being completely ridiculous. And then at the same time, with them working on the movie within a movie, you can make lots of statements about the problems of horror films and stuff like that. But this movie doesn't go over any of that.
No, that's a really good point. Yeah, I think what you hit on with embracing the mockumentary side of it would be perfect, which is ironic because there's a mockumentary about werewolves being created right now, the follow-up to What We Do in the Shadows, that I'm sure is going to be wonderful.
It will be, definitely. It will be great. It'll be 10 times better than this, and the werewolves section of What We Do in the Shadows was 10 times better than this movie, or most.
Werewolves, not swearwolves?
Yes, exactly. And that, even though it's not a complete werewolf movie, it does lend the simple question of, what do you think some of the best werewolf movies are, and what do you think are some of the worst?
I mean, it feels stereotypical to say it, but I think American Werewolf in London is probably the best werewolf movie I've ever seen.
Yeah,
it has that reputation for a reason, and it is not just the incredible transformation work, although it definitely is that, but it's just an all-around very good movie. I love the entire beginning. I love where it goes. I love how the ending is not happy at all. It's just a good monster movie. I really like it. I like the first Underworld movie. I know you don't, but I like the practical effects for the werewolves. I like that they spent the time to do that. I thought that was really cool. What else do I like? How about you? What are some of your favorites?
Well, I mean, American Werewolf definitely hits on it. In London, be very specific.
Yeah, London, definitely.
Because,
London.
Of course, obviously, one of the worst ones that comes to mind is American Werewolf in Paris. I'll go with the original Wolfman movie.
That's
fantastic.
Yeah,
it's great. Even the second one, that the name is eluding me, but the second werewolf movie was great. There's also Curse of the Werewolf that has a young Oliver Reed in the movie. It takes a long time to have the werewolf transformation and everything, but it's well worth it. That like latter half of the movie is really, really dark, but it's really cool, like leading up to it, seeing the dramatic side of things, the slow transformation, like slow changes in his life and everything. It's really, really well done. And I think it's a Hammer. Yeah, it's one of the Hammer horror films that was made when they were under contract from Universal. And it's awesome. It's great. Of course, the original Howling is worth checking out. To go a little off to the side, two that always come to mind that I always suggest to people when they're looking for different types of werewolves movies, there is Ginger Snaps. Have you seen that one?
No, that's one. I know it's usually on all the lists, but I have not seen that one.
It's great. It shows why it's very sad that Catherine Isabel was in Countdown, because she's one of the leads of Ginger Snaps. And it's a female-centric werewolf story where the werewolf element of it coincides with a coming-of-age story for girls becoming women. And it's really well done. And then on the other side is Dog Soldiers. Not familiar with that one either.
I haven't seen that one either, no.
That's early Neil Marshall, actually. And it deals with a squadron of soldiers who end up getting attacked by werewolves and have to try to hold up with limited ammunition and supplies while fighting these giant evil werewolves.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not like I'm looking at lists right now, and I haven't seen so many of these movies because I'm not a werewolf guy.
Which ones are you seeing on there?
One of those has the Jack Nicholson one from '94.
Wolf? Wolf's okay.
I saw that. I think I did remember seeing this. It's a okay. 90s movie. It's a very 90s movie.
I like Spader in it. I'll say that. But not so much Jack Nicholson.
Of course, there's Teen Wolf.
Yeah, you can put in the plus and minus on the best side, even though it would be a little bit further down the list. You could put Teen Wolf, and then definitely under worst werewolf films would be Teen Wolf 2.
Oh God, that's so bad.
Hey, it even got a call out by Jimmy Kimmel during the Oscars this year.
I forgot about that. Let's see. Did you see the Benicio del Toro one, the newest try to reboot of the Wolfman? I didn't hate it. It was okay.
Did you see the director's cut of it?
No.
Definitely give the director's cut a chance. The director's cut is much better. There's about 30 minutes that is added into the movie, and it shuffles where a couple scenes are. There's a couple great actors who have moments that are put back in. I can't remember if it's Christopher Lee or what old great actor has some scenes that are in the movie that aren't in the theatrical. Then it's cool to see them. But the director's cut is much better. There's still, plenty of problems with it, but it's a lot better. It's a lot more stable, I'd say, too.
Cool.
So it shows more of the vision of what the director wanted, but was unfortunately taken away from him by the studio. When it comes to werewolf films, you'll actually find longer lists when it comes to like the worst compared to the best, just because it's so hard for people to A, come up with good werewolf effects, B, have good werewolf transformation, C, decide on what type of background mythology they want to have with them. You've got Bad Moon from years ago that had, I'm going to blank on her, Muriel Hemingway was in that one. Wolfen will be on both best and worst depending upon who you talk to. It's a polarizing film in that. There's some people who buy in to the tone of what it's saying, and there's people that are completely turned off by it. You also have Cursed, the Wes Craven one that had who is it? Christina Ricci and Jesse Eisenberg.
Yeah, I remember that one. It's bad.
It's bad, and the director's cut is still bad. It just has blood in it. So that's what you get from a PG-13 werewolf movie that then magically becomes unrated on video. I'm trying to think of other ones. Mr. Science Theater 3000 had an episode that concerned a movie called Werewolf that I think it has Joe Estevez, who is Emilio and Charlie's uncle and is Martin Sheen's brother, who had about 4 to 5 different movies that ended up on MST3K, but one of them is a terrible, terrible werewolf movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
There's a lot of them. Let's see, Skinwalkers.
Haven't seen it.
No, it's another terrible one. That was another, I think, PG-13 one. And then there was Blood and Chocolate that came out, I want to say, a little bit after the first Twilight movie and was trying to buy into that romanticized version of the werewolves that came with that, basically. They're all bad.
I will not be seeing that one either. Yeah, I mean, like, the weird thing is, like, last week with Poltergeist, like, I told you I finished that movie and I kind of wanted to go watch Poltergeist 2. I don't have a lot of incentive or desire to watch Howling movies right now. I guess I need to watch the first one because
Yeah, you definitely do. It's Joe Dante. You owe it to yourself to at some point within the next couple months to see the first one.
Yeah. So I might do that, but I think I'll leave my Howling knowledge to these two films.
What's your vote? I mean, I think I know what you're going to say, but so what's your...
Yeah, it's guilty. It's a shit movie. And the thing is, there are parts of this that I absolutely loved. Like, there are parts where I was laughing out loud, and my wife in the other room, like, came in and was like, what are you laughing at? But the movie as a whole is just too much of a slog. Like, it's just, there's too much crap between the joyous moments. Like, you could cut together a clip of, like, 5 minutes of the best moments of this movie. And so I would say watch that.
You wouldn't necessarily want people to watch or attempt to watch and understand this movie?
No.
All right. That's understandable. I feel the opposite. I was worried about this going in, and I want to say not guilty to it because I want people to see how bizarre it is. There's plenty of movies that we've covered that it's just like, no, don't see it. Don't experience this whatsoever. But this movie is just so fucking weird. Like, you have to, we've explained it. We spent almost 2 hours talking about how insane this movie is. And it was difficult even to write, like, what points we were going to cover because of how often the movie switches on a dime. And it's terrible in a way that I want to expose other people to it because it is just nonstop insanity. And if you try to tell people, hey, this isn't a movie, they're going to think that you're completely insane.
Yeah, I'll relent to you on that point. I think it is worth examining. I just, like, I wanted to like it more than I did.
No, I agree with that. And since we're split, we're going to attempt something that is going to completely backfire. And we will put up a poll, basically, asking people if they think that this movie should be saved for people to witness and enjoy, or if it should be shot into the far reaches of space so that no one can ever be harmed by it. With our luck, we will manage to get one person only to vote, and that would be enough to tip the scales. So I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that we don't have just 2 people. So putting it out to you, the people who listen to this, I really hope that you've seen Howling 3 or are willing to watch before the next episode that we have come out, which will be next Friday or Saturday. that we're going to leave it to you guys. It's not, the format we normally want to do, but we'll do it for this time since this happened. It was, inevitable that at some point this would happen.
Yeah,
We've been
of course.
So we'll try this. Next week, I am very excited to announce here. We'll announce it on social for anybody who doesn't get a chance to listen to this episode, because I know this next week's going to be busy for some people with not just me, but people who may listen with South by Southwest. But next week we are going to be covering the third Ghoulies movie, Ghoulies Go to College, and we are watching that one because we are going to be having a couple special guests, two fantastic gentlemen that I've gotten to know over the last year who host two podcasts, one of which is called Nightmare Junkhead. The other one is called Nerds of Nostalgia. And we are going to have them on to talk about this movie. So I'm very excited. This is going to be the first time that we're going to have guests. So hopefully it won't be the last time that we have guests, but it depends on
Try not
Scott.
to scare away the guest. Oh, it's my fault. Oh, sure.
I was going to say
sure.
Scott and my duty to not scare them off, as well as hope that the movie that they have chosen, and I'm calling it out here saying they chose it. I did what I do with Scott. I gave him an option, and it was their poison that they chose. So hopefully it'll lead for a good time. Scott, where can we find you on the internet?
I can be found on Twitter at ScottDaly85. That's DALY. And you can see all of my writing at dailyplanetfilms.com.
That's excellent. And I can be found at Adrian Torres on Twitter. And then I also have reviews on boomhowdy.com and downrightcreepy.com. We are recording this on Thursday morning, basically. It was started on Wednesday evening, became Thursday morning. I will be waking up from 2 hours of sleep and a couple hours from now to be heading out onto the road to Austin for South by Southwest. I'm going to have a whole bunch of reviews that will be up on boomhowdy.com, as well as if you happen to be in Austin, keep your eyes peeled to boomhowdy.com for some interesting things that they've had pop up the last couple days. On behalf of Scott and I, you guys behave and don't call on the power of Herr Mullen.
Reach like fingers.